And good afternoon, everyone. Happy just about Memorial Day holiday weekend. Happy Friday, everyone. And welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my silly, very silly co-host,
Masick.
Frederick Masick, husband.
Stephen the Medium.
Yeah, Stephen the Medium, who happens to be very, very silly and laughs at the silliest things.
That's me.
You can imagine. That would be you.
Yes.
And we are, Stephen, we are about to embark on the opening of summer in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And the floodgates are about to open. How about that?
Well, as I was saying to your cousin, Ava, that, this weekend gets busy, but it really does not go crazy until the end of June when kids are out of school.
Well, from your mouth to God's ear.
Sure.
I hope so, because
sure.
With the bridge getting fixed a few months ago, and the traffic was horrendous. So I'm not looking forward to the crazy traffic, but it is what it is. I mean, we knew moving here that that's what it was gonna look like. So we need to just toughen up, right?
Well, yeah. It's like complaining up here about the cold or winter. You live here, so either move or stop complaining.
So what are you saying?
We live in this most beautiful place,
that's true,
in the world. So you know what? It's beautiful.
It is true. So what are you just saying? Stop complaining. That's what you're telling me. Yes.
There's
stop
too
complaining,
much
Helix.
to be grateful for.
That's right, Coach Helix. Stop complaining. You better start walking the talk here. So last week we had it was our first show back after a few months of I had to take a leave of absence as the result of caring for my mom when she was ill, and then she passed on March 30th. And last week was our first show back, and it really was wonderful to be back, Stephen. Wonderful because being back, for me anyways, it's very therapeutic. Just having these conversations and engaging in these conversations and sort of being transparent with people. It's a very therapeutic way of coping with anything, and in my case, coping with grief. And today we're going to continue the conversation from last week about loss, vulnerability, trauma, and really how that leads to losing oneself, losing ourselves, and how to, what we can do to avoid that. But before we get into that conversation, Stephen, let's talk about, first of all, how you're doing and what's going on, because I know this weekend is jam-packed with activities. Yes, so
stuff.
Let's tell people what you're up to, and you are up to some pretty amazing things. So
well, you just got me teary-eyed because it was very close to how you doing, and coming from Rhode Island in Providence, you got me very teary-eyed. I used to hear that all the time. How you doing? So it's okay. Let me just get composed.
Compose yourself.
I'm so good. As a matter of fact, this morning I was outside cutting back the big leaf hydrangeas, because hydrangeas are huge. Hydrangeas are beautiful, right? But they're huge in Cape Cod. And there's so many different types of hydrangeas, so you don't know. Some have, the old wood has new flowers, some don't. But I think I'm getting pretty good. But I will just tell you quickly that I have, as Elix you can attest to, and umbrella magnolia, which is a really rare tree, and I have been working on it since we've been here. So this is our third summer, and last year there was 2 buds, and this year there's 6. And I'm going to take pictures of them and post on Facebook. When they open up, they're these most gorgeous white flowers you've ever seen. So I just want to
very, very, very different. I never seen such a tree until we moved here. And we were like, wow, what is that? So, but you have a very green thumb. So you do really well with anything related to Mother Nature.
Yes, so. And I love it. I love being out there, and I planted all the flowers in the front, and just dealing with them and working with them and caring for them, I love very much. But in reference to what's going on with me, so a week from Sunday, I think that is June 4th, yes, I am doing an event in Acushnet, Massachusetts. And I don't know how many tickets left, but I don't think there's a lot. But check out my website. It is Off Broadway School of Dance, and it's a dance studio. And some of the money is going to go back to the students for competitions in costumes. So this is really, really cool. This is going to be a great event, and it's I think it's at in the afternoon. I can't remember, but it is June 4th. So if you go on my website, you can purchase tickets via Venmo through one of the persons at the studio. And I just put on my website the event July 30th in New York City. So it's my first event in New York City at the Green Room 42, which is huge. And that venue has just hosted so many incredible musicians and just celebrities. So this is really, really exciting. Very, very exciting.
It's a big, big deal. So our New York friends, we're gonna be calling upon all of you.
That's
to help us spread the word, promote the event, so that we can have a sold out show. Because this is amazing. It's amazing that you are gonna have your first show in New York City. Not only your first show in New York City, but your first show in this really awesome historical venue. Really.
And imagine, the name of this venue is Green Room 42. So my mom's favorite color, just like mine, is green. And 42 was the number of the house that was my family's house that I grew up in. So it's my mom and Grandma Rose and Grandpa Stefan, that those are the Polish side that own the house. They're all over me, and I love that. And I also, as I mentioned last week, I finished my book, and I am now currently having it edited and starting the process of getting a cover. And so more on that very, very soon. But that date of it just coming out is not too far away.
And that is a book you want to get your hands on, because it's a fascinating book. I read it. I couldn't put it down. So it's really awesome. Stephen, congratulations. That's a really awesome accomplishment. So
Thank you.
Super proud of you. And last week you also had an amazing event.
I did.
You had nearly 100 people show up at this venue in Western Mass, and it was a really awesome event, right?
In Sterling, and I'm actually in the process of putting together an event at the Public House in Sturbridge Village. So that's going to be a lot of fun, because I think I'm going to go with like a buffet as part of the event. And I mean, as you know, Elix, we go there a lot. That food is amazing. I don't eat meat, so I don't eat the turkey dinner. You got it because we went to the Public House after we finished in Sterling, and the food, no matter what you get, is pretty amazing. So, and Monday I am filming something that I can't say anything about, because
yet here you are telling people you're filming something.
I can say I'm
seriously.
filming anything. Listen, I could be
Oh my
out like in my
God.
front yard filming something Sunday, but I am filming something. And
Well,
that's about all.
we're filming something tomorrow too.
Yes,
right?
yes. So this is a filming weekend. So it's
Yeah,
very
we
very
just can't
exciting.
tell you what the something is, but we're filming. yeah, filming something. I was about to say, but you didn't give me an opportunity to say that the turkey dinner at the Public House is so good. It may be worth giving up your what do you call it? You're not eating
My
meat
pescatarian?
restrictions
No.
just for that turkey dinner. Just saying,
No.
just saying.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
And Stephen, aside from all the the shows that you have, how else people can get a hold of you? Because they can book groups in your office, but mostly if anyone is from anywhere in the world, they can book a reading via Zoom, right?
Yeah, you can go to my website, stephenthemedium.com, and I have Amanda, who is working with me and is phenomenal. I mean, this young lady is 3 steps ahead of me.
Mm.
I sent her a message this morning saying I'll reach out to the venue for next week, the dance studio, to see if there's any more tickets open, and she responded with, "I already did." I'm
Yeah,
like,
that,
"What?"
that's that's somebody who is actually really good, a good hire. You did very, very good.
No, and
And,
she's the sweetest, and her aunt, Marianne, I love to death. Is just they're just good people, such good people.
and we are very lucky to be surrounded by amazing people. And also, in a couple of weeks, just about a couple of weeks, we are heading to LA. And of
Yes,
course, you would say that we're heading to LA to celebrate your birthday. We're going to LA and Palm Springs, right?
I get the best of both worlds because we go to L.A. first. So we're in LA on the 14th, which is my birthday, and that's the day we head to Palm Springs. So I spend my birthday in LA and Palm Springs. How cool is
Yes.
that?
Well, it's not going to be very cool in Palm Springs. It's going to be quite hot, but that's pretty cool. It's cool. I mean, we love
No,
going.
no, but it's a dry heat.
Yeah,
So,
we. Oh, yeah. That's what people say. That's what they say. It's a dry heat. You won't feel it. Oh, yeah, right. But that's exciting because that's also part of all the filming we're doing and
yes,
some amazing, exciting projects that are coming up.
yes, yes. So
So,
stay tuned for announcements at any point.
yes, stay tuned for all the filming that we're not supposed to be telling you what it is, but here
We
we are.
didn't.
But
We
here we
didn't.
are telling you that we have some filming coming up, and but stay tuned for details. So Stephen, I think what I'm gonna do because it's just about break time. So when we come back, like I said at the beginning, we are going to continue the conversation that we started last week. You know about loss, vulnerability, trauma. And this time, I really want to hone in on the, you know, what happens when one lose oneself when dealing with all of that. So I think that's a great conversation, and I can't wait to get your insight because your insight, it's a pretty, you understand you understand the spirit world, and so I think your insight maybe perhaps come from a place that we wouldn't normally think of. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. It makes perfect
Sure.
sense to me. So,
Yes.
so we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about losing yourself and how to navigate loss, trauma, and keep your identity. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix. With me, my amazing and very silly co host,
Stephen the Medium is here.
Stephen the Medium. And we are continuing our conversation from last week about loss, grief, trauma. And this time, we want to talk about losing oneself, how to how to cope with all of that without losing oneself. When you lose yourself, you feel disconnected, confused, and may even have a loss of or lack of motivation to do the things that you normally want to do. And you can also experience losing that zeal for the things that really inspire you. So the question is, how do we gain control of losing of oneself to avoid losing, ourselves when we are facing loss, trauma, difficult situations that may affect our well-being, if you will. So how do we get back to ourselves after facing these situations? That's the question. And when I think about Stephen being disconnected, being confused, lacking motivation, losing the zeal, that's a big one. The zeal for things that inspire me. I can tell you, I've experienced all of the above. All over the last several months, I've experienced all of the above. I don't know if you've experienced the same. When you faced similar situations, in particular when you lost your mom, Stephen. But for me, I've experienced all. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most difficult things to deal with is how it hits you out of nowhere. You may just feel like the I don't know, the last couple of days you've been feeling okay, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that same day or the next day, it's like you've just been thrown to the ground, and um, all that feeling the past 2 days of just feeling a little bit better, it doesn't exist anymore. I think that's one of the most difficult things, is that it's just there's no rhyme or reason.
Yeah, and I believe that the sense of losing yourself also affects our identity. And some of the when I think about so what may be some of the causes, I think about emotional fatigue, which can actually come at you very easily when you're dealing, with loss, or you're coping with difficult circumstances, trauma. And I've personally experienced trauma, and I'll get to that, more about that in a minute. Now, when we experience trauma, Stephen, that leads to fear, right? Fear of experiencing the trauma again, which then leads to avoidance, avoiding things that we feel are going to cause that trauma again. And ultimately, it's almost like one can lead to the other, which can lead to the other, and then ultimately you end up disconnecting, because you disconnecting is it's a way to not deal with any of the above. And again, why is it that we may experience that loss of self? Well, sometimes it is because we are focusing more on others and ignoring ourselves, ignoring the needs of ourselves. And again, I've experienced that. And frankly, I think you saw me experience that before I knew I was experiencing that. And
Mm-hmm.
and then when we disconnect from our thoughts and our feelings as a way to avoid, to not have to relive some of those experiences, that leads to that self of loss. And that happens, when we are experiencing, you know life transitions, such as loss, or um, difficult situations or unexpected situations. So have you, have you, Stephen, experienced losing yourself at all?
Yes, I mean, in different ways. talk about trauma. When my dad took his life when I was 8 years old, the first thing that comes up is shame for me, and everything else you just talked about that was part of my existence, and to a degree still part of my existence that I work on. And then of course with my mom, with my best friend David, who took his life in 97. We just talked about his anniversary, I think 27 years. So absolutely. But one of the greatest things that I can share with the audience and anybody who's going to listen to this at some point is I think I know from dealing and speaking with spirit, what I have found is that sense of loss is in many ways supposed to happen, because you need to lose a part of the part that's not serving you. But the key is, if you can't figure it out and replace it with because we're all here to learn, right? Every one of us comes here to learn. So I think when you go through this grief and you lose somebody, then that loss of self, especially a portion of it, needs to be replenished with what the experience of losing that person in the first place is all about, and they also help. So in other words, when I've done readings before, the one thing that stands out, probably like in February, I read this woman who lost her husband. It was only a month. Her husband died a month after or before. Am I saying that right? Yes. The husband died, and a month later, she came to me, and we did a virtual Zoom reading. And one of the things that he was so in spirit kept saying to me to tell his wife was that it almost felt like I loved you so much that I know that you need to remove some of the stuff that's not serving you and replace it with the goals and passions and purpose that are coming up for you. And I'm going to be there to help you to fill that opening with what it's supposed to be filled with, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. Stephen, it's interesting because I didn't connect that you're very open, very transparent about what happened to you when you lost your dad, and and almost like separating the kid before and the kid after.
Right.
And that we could say that is a form of losing yourself, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
But then you also bring a very, very good point, which I really didn't give a thought until listening to you, that maybe losing yourself, it's not always negative. Maybe there are moments of losing yourself, or there are ways of losing yourself that may be positive. Because I also think about, you talked a lot about this. We've talked a lot about this. When you are living your soul's purpose, we could argue that we could lose ourselves in living our soul's purpose. What do you think?
I just did my first blog, and that really was part of the substance of that blog, is that it's finding yourself. And the whole process here, from what I've learned from spirit, is that we come here, we agree to come here, we come with a cluster of people that we're supposed to interact with, whether that's temporary or our entire lives, but it is a process of learning. And the people that come here and learn what they're supposed to learn are really the most complete, the most grateful, the happiest, the most satisfied, and then have more of an option of what they want to do when they go into spirit. So I think such a huge part of us, if not one of the biggest part of us when we come here, is to figure out why we're here. And that coincides with the learning and the purpose of why we're here.
Yeah. And again, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, when we fall in love, we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves because, perhaps when you fall in love, you're living that soul purpose in that moment, right? Because that's not to say that, our sole purpose evolves, I would imagine, Stephen, that evolves as our life, our life is energy. So energy is always changing. So, we are supposed to change. We are supposed to evolve, you know, as we grow, as we expand. But I'm thinking when we fall in love, we lose ourselves in that moment. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, no, and I think it's what you just said, Elix, is that you're, as you talked about, when you fall in love and you lose part of yourself or you lose yourself. Yeah, I mean, in love or any other kind of example, experience, situation, is that if you understand that to a certain degree we are supposed to lose ourselves, we're supposed to, because if we don't, and we never did, and that's sort of the downfall, the trap that people fall in, then you're stagnant. You don't move forward. If you're stagnant, you can't learn, and then you're just repeating the cycle over and over and over again. And I think that's what happens to many people.
Yeah, I think the question is, or maybe what to look out for is, if you have a sense of losing yourself and you're feeling powerless, maybe that should be then an opportunity to look to see what it is that you may need to shift so that you can embrace the losing self part, but embrace your power rather than give your power away in the process. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, Steven. It
Yeah,
makes perfect sense to me.
of course, in what you're saying, Elix, is really what I'm saying, is that when you're feeling that way, it's because you're not replacing it with what you're supposed to replace it with.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to take a break, Steve. And by the way, anyone, if you want to join the conversation, if you have anything to share, if you've experienced loss, grief, or a difficult situation of any kind, feel free to call us at 508 222 1320. But we are going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. We'll be right back. I sure did. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex, and with me, my co host.
Attorney Masick is here in the house.
Mm-hmm. And he also is Stephen the Medium.
Yes.
And we're talking today about losing yourself and navigating loss, grief, trauma, and keeping your identity. In other words, not losing yourself. And we talked about the fact that perhaps Stephen brought in his spirit perspective that losing yourself, that we're supposed to lose ourselves as humans. That's part of our human process. But there's the distinction of losing yourself, feeling powerless versus really evolving, embracing that part that of losing yourself, that actually it's part of the evolving human process while keeping your power, while holding on to your power. And I'm not sure that I'm saying that as good as you said it, Stephen, but I'm giving it my best shot.
Well, it was good.
So, Stephen, what would you say then? And I'm sort of honing in on that spiritual perspective because it's a very empowering way of looking at, you know, coping, right? Whether it's loss, grief, trauma, etc. So, what would you say it's something that you could suggest people do if they know that they've losing themselves, but they're suffering while losing their self in the process.
Well, I think the first thing I would just tell somebody is that it's okay to go through with what you're going through. You have to go through it. I just said that to you a couple of days ago, Elix, that you have to feel the emotions, you have to feel the hurt, the sadness, all of that. And there's no like rules on each person either. So a person, I would tell the person too that each person grieves differently, and some people it takes much longer, some people it's much quicker, and you have to also be on a very conscious level of always forgiving yourself, also just forgiving yourself. But I think one of the things that, to answer the question, Elix, that I would say is, which I think I'm getting this from Spirit and all the readings that I've done, is that if someone is in a place that they just feel like they're losing themselves, and it's like, a black hole that they keep going down and down and down in, I think starting with every night before the person goes to sleep is just take a couple of deep breaths and just find, even if it's one positive thing, even if the positive thing is I got through today and I am here, I'm living, I'm breathing, that's enough. And I think that the person will get better and better depending on the situation and the circumstances, but being able to pull some things that they're grateful for, their successes. And what that does is that it introduces the next morning already, so that even if you do that one thing and say, okay, it wasn't the best day, it was actually a horrible day, but I'm still here, I'm still living and breathing, I'm still here. That sets the next morning up in such a positive way, because it sets the energy up to say, yeah, I'm still here, that's right, I'm still here, and today's going to be even better. That's one of the, I think, that the key things I would tell people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I want to circle back to why you were giving me the advice of embracing the what is, embracing what I am experiencing. So, as I said before, you know, when you lose someone, that actually can cause trauma, and trauma can lead to the dissociation, like that disconnect, which, by the way, also leads to losing oneself. And and I knew I been I had trauma because of course not only did I lose my mom, but there were circumstances around the loss of my mom. So the first time she had a uh, what is it that she had, Stephen? Oh my goodness, when she couldn't talk.
A stroke.
A stroke, excuse me, I lost the word for a moment. She had a stroke, and we happened to be in the house, and we were the first ones running, to her aid. And I never, ever, ever experienced watching somebody have a stroke in front of myself. So that was trauma right there. So after that, I was constantly worried. Oh my God, when is the next time I'm gonna walk into the room and she's gonna, not be able to talk again. And I was constantly fearing that. Then she fell, and I happened to be with her minutes before she fell. And by falling, I mean she really blacked out, and she hit the floor head on. And I heard the noise. I turned around. I find her unconscious, unresponsive. That was also traumatic for me. And there were, it took me days. I mean, I'm still not over uh, letting go of that vivid vision of finding my mother face down on the floor, and or hearing the noise, that big noise, that I didn't know what it was. It happened to be when she fell, when she dropped to the floor. That was also traumatic. Then, she had another stroke, and I happened this time, I was in front of her when she started having the stroke, and that was also trauma. So, one of the things that happened very recently, and again, I'm dealing with the loss, I'm dealing with my grief, and I uh, last 2 nights ago at 4:30 a.m. my phone, which is always in silent, but I could hear the beeping noise. Somebody was texting me, and I jumped out of bed. Like I almost went in automatic mode, jumped out of bed, because I thought, oh my God, that's my mom. She's calling me. There's some emergency of some sort. And of course, my mom is already passed, so there's not such thing. But that's the trauma part. Shortly after that, the same day, it's now the morning. I wake up early. Steven is happens to come to the bathroom to check in. We had a few, we were just about getting ready to go running, and Steven says, "I'm gonna go down. I'll meet you downstairs." And about 2 minutes after that, I heard distinctly Stephen yell at the top of his lungs, "Help! Help!" And of course, my heart dropped immediately. I thought I was going to die, and I ran downstairs like a speeding bullet to the kitchen, like asking, screaming, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" I get to the kitchen, and Steven's looking at me like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" He's asking me if I'm okay, because he never said help, help. He was actually playing with the dogs, but that's what I heard. In my mind, that's what I heard. And that's part of that trauma, Stephen, that it's sort of like hides in the background. And to be honest with you, this it hides in the background because disconnecting is a coping mechanism. Is a coping mechanism that allowed me to just put it in the background. But that wasn't necessarily that good, because when things like that happen, it just brings it all forward so fast, and it was like a Mack truck coming at me. And it took me a while after that happened, Stephen, to just get my bearings, get myself grounded, because there was at first I almost couldn't breathe, because that was such a vivid experience for me. So share with everyone, Stephen, now that I share the story, what was the advice that you gave me after that experience?
Well, it's very common, Elix, because of the trauma. Obviously, with like a flashback, or that happens with people. But one of the things I said to Elix, I said to you, is that of course, when it was in the process of happening, it is horrific, right? As you just said, you can't breathe. It's a very, very bad experience. But when we were driving to go running, I said to you, but number one, even though you thought you heard that, you got through it. Number one, and the big thing, number two, is that when this is part of the process, it's part. You've got to go through this to get on the other side, and it's almost like you also have a part of your universe that is almost setting you up. As I talked about, you lose a part of yourself, and if you're lucky and you're fortunate and you understand that you fill that in with things that are going to help you move forward, that again connected to your purpose and your soul, that's really what the universe is trying to help you with, is to try to almost put you back through that experience. Or I call it a test. It's testing you. It's is the reaction now different than it was when it first happened? And now look what just happened. It was the same feeling, but it was such a more positive outcome. What the universe was really saying to you is that they don't want you to stick with and hold on to and be in a place of every time your text or your phone rings at 4 o'clock in the morning, or you think you hear something, that it is trauma. It's the worst, because this experience wasn't. As much as you needed to go through that, and it was a horrible experience when you got running through the foyer into the kitchen. I think I was crouched down on the floor with Django and little Ricky playing with them, smiling, and I looked up at you like, my God, what's wrong? So it was sort of desensitizing you to that it's not always that way. It was what it really is, Elix. It's a process to get you through it and to get you on the other side. That's what it is.
Yeah, that is, and that's exactly what you did. So we do have to take a commercial break, and when we come back, Stephen, I want to talk about what are some specific things that we could do to embrace that change, to embrace that part of losing ourselves, that it is absolutely necessary for our growth as humans. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I am your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my wonderful co-host,
Stephen, the medium. And Elix, thank you very much. Before we took the last break, the way you said we have to take a commercial break. Well, now we're going to take a commercial break. It shot me back to when I was like a kid in the 70s when you'd hear In Living Color or, okay, we're taking a commercial break.
Yeah, well, for those of you who, well, you can't listen what happens in the background, but he also scared our producer because he was being very silly during the break, and our producer didn't really understand that was Steven being silly, and he thought that the station was hacked. Or he was about to have the whole station shut down because he thinks the station is hacked. But by the way, this is what I deal with. This is not abnormal. This is not Stephen being silly, once in a while. This is every day, 24/7. Stephen living silly with living with Stephen. But anyways, welcome back. We are talking about how to navigate loss, grief, trauma, keep your identity, and not lose yourself, not lose your power and lose yourself. Now, having said that, Stephen the medium, gave us a very important distinction. The distinction is that losing yourself, and I would add to that, losing yourself powerfully, is a necessary part for our human growth. So it is something that we want to learn to embrace. So what are some of the things that you could do to embrace losing yourself when you're dealing with grief, when you're dealing with trauma, loss, unexpected situations, difficult challenges in your life? What are some of the things that you can do? Now, I'll give you my perspective from a coaching perspective, but Stephen, please add anything that you think it's necessary or important that our listeners should know from a spiritual perspective. So one of the things that you should always strive to improve is, of course, your emotional well-being and mental health. So if at some point you feel it, you may need to speak to a professional. I'm very lucky to have somebody who I'm very, very connected with and close to, and she is always, able to guide me more from as a mental health provider. And I'm actually going to talk to her tomorrow because she's known me for many years, and she knows that I've been dealing with a lot of emotional trauma in the past couple of months. So seek out professional help if you feel that may be helpful for you. Now, from a spiritual perspective, Stephen, what would you recommend from an emotional well-being and mental health perspective?
Well, I think speaking to people, I think last week, Celissa came on. She called in and she just talked about just reaching out to people, which I think is a big deal to get through. I was thinking about that time years ago, Felix, that you and I were in Narragansett Beach sitting on the wall, and there was a woman next to us that was crying, and I started talking to her, and I'm still Facebook friends with her, Erica, and she was going through a lot, and I know she sent me a message that helped a lot. But I would also say it's so important to stay in the present, and because when you go through trauma or loss, it's a constant, it's a roller coaster, right? And it's a cycle, and it's up and down, but it's there all the time. And it's a great way to make yourself feel better, and again, move the needle where you want it to move to keep going with your purpose, is to stay in the present. And how you do that is something so simple. If you are sitting in the living room on the couch, you just focus on something in the room, whether it's the TV, a lamp, it doesn't matter, something that's on one of the sofa tables, and just look at it and start dissecting it. Just start looking at it. Are all the sides the same shape? is one side more discolored? If you look at a window, how many panes are in the window? If it's like a French door or something like that, just doing that is taking you out of the past, out of the future, and it's putting you in the present. And the great thing about being in the present is that you don't have that feeling of you need to control and things. And when you have a loss, that's one of the major things, right? Is that you cannot control. You just can't control it. You can't control what's going around you with the loss. You can't bring them back. So when you're in the present, you're in the present, so you don't have those sort of branches sticking out like I need to control this. How do I bring them back? You're just in the present. And it's a really, really great way to, if you do it daily, it just gets you better and better and better and just makes you feel better. And it does really, again, move the needle to the place you want to go.
I love it. The other thing that you can do, this one is to strive to improve your physical well-being and fitness, exercise. And I will tell you, 2 days ago when I had that episode where I thought Stephen was screaming for help, we went running, and exercising really allowed me to get grounded and decompress myself both physically and mentally, and also pay attention to a very well balanced diet, because whatever you put into your body is, if you put there's this metaphor, like if you put really high quality gas, your car runs better, right? Same thing is, with your, what you feed your body with. If you put good quality food, your body, it's going to respond better as well. So pay attention to your physical well-being and fitness. Exercise and nutrition are a must. Anything that you would add to that, Stephen?
I would say in those times, though, that you feel like a chocolate cake's going to help, just eat the chocolate cake. You can get back the next day and, like you said, let's exercise and start eating healthier. But just, again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Forgive yourself. Just stay in the moment, stay in the present, and it helps.
I don't suggest you eat the whole chocolate cake. Maybe a
Well, if
piece
it's
of the
Greg's.
chocolate, a piece of the chocolate cake at a time, and forgive yourself one piece at a time. That may be a good strategy. Also, pay attention to issues around confidence and self-esteem. I know, and I think this ties back to being present, Stephen. I know for me, one of the things that really helps me get grounded and improves my confidence and improves my self-esteem is, focusing on gratitude, on the neuroscience of gratitude. Gratitude works miracles. It's like a miracle drug, and something that I practice every single day. What else would you add to that?
No, I don't think there is anything. Gratitude is one of the best things, and I think you can use that in so many different aspects of your life, and just in the middle of the day, just thinking of something you're grateful for.
Beautiful. Now, pay also attention to your social health and relationships. I think you and I have spoken about this. There's people that are going to help you get grounded and that are going to support you, and there's people who are going to suck the living life out of you. So make sure that you have very healthy boundaries, and know who's who, so that you're not opening your inner circle to people who may not be bringing the best energy into your space. And I know you're big on this one, Stephen. Anything else you would add to that?
No, I mean, I would say that's a rule that I try to enforce no matter what is going on in my life. I think it's more important when you lose someone, because you're sort of like injured, if you will, and you're needing to move forward. But across the board, that is great advice.
Yeah, and I think the last thing, and again, this is something that you and I talked very frequently. I know we talked about it last week, is just really give yourself grace. Really give yourself grace. As human beings, our life it's designed to have breakdowns. It's designed for us to deal with some physical and emotional challenges. That is part of our necessary growth. So when we're dealing with things like this, give yourself a grace. Give yourself permission to be okay for not being okay in the moment. And I tell you, I speak that, but it's something that, requires a whole lot of intention and a whole lot of purpose to practice, because I very quickly forget that. And I'm lucky to have Stephen remind me of that time and time and time again. Anything else, Stephen, about that?
No, just grace, forgiveness, love, all those things have to come back to you. You have to make sure that you give that to yourself.
Yeah. And I would leave with this: the most courageous self-care act, when you know you want to be vulnerable, is to be willing to ask for help. It is okay to ask for help. Do not pretend that you need to be okay. You can ask for help, and that is perfectly okay to do so. Anything else you would add, Stephen?
No, I love that.
So with that said, I think we come to the end of the show. I mean, this show, it feels like we say hello and then we have to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephen, what is remind people how they can get a hold of you?
You can go to my website, stephenthemedium.com, and that's where I am all over social media. And if we are on next week, just join us because we'll be in living color.
Yeah, we'll be taking commercial breaks every 15 minutes. Oh my God, he's so silly. And of course, if you don't follow me, you should be following me at Coach Elix anywhere on social media. And I hope you guys have a magnificent, healthy Memorial Day weekend. Happy summer, everyone. See you next week.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.